Subtitling ZDF 2/3/2026. We are in the fourth year day 345 since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. In today's report, we see some quite interesting geolocations in the area around Cross Castle, but we also see a Nigerian mercenary with an important message for all of us. And we also see how a drone pilot was able to capture a Russian soldier, as well as much more. The former Russian president, Dmitry Medvedev, has explicitly praised North Korea and stated that Russia should learn from the districts of Kingyang. But what was actually praised? He especially emphasized how North Korea, despite international isolation, was able to quickly mobilize its economy and build a functioning arms industry. In his view, that deserves great respect. At the same time, Medvedev also openly thanked North Korea for its military support, which Russia had denied about 5 million times before, even though everyone said that the North Koreans were fighting with it. They finally admitted it and now pretend it was always an open secret, which it was. Yet some people online still think it never happened. He says that Korean soldiers fought shoulder to shoulder with Russian troops and behaved heroically during the operations. This contribution would not be forgotten, and is also a solid part of the shared history and friendship between both countries. Let's discuss that briefly. He praises North Korea and thinks it's good that they can mobilize quickly in terms of the economy and were able to build a strong arms industry. I don't know which economic figures he used from North Korea for that, but what we know about North Korea isn't exactly rosy. By now, maybe even better compared to Russia. Then it would make sense that they see a role model in that. But those are exactly the two things that Russia also wants: to rise again from isolation and ideally to mobilize even more citizens for the war. By now, an authoritarian and isolated system, where as always there are major famines, hardly any energy, and poor quality of life, is being presented as a role model for Russia. I don't know if that's really as healthy as people here think it is. On the other hand, people praise the arms industry, even though Russian soldiers themselves constantly complain about the poorly made weapons and barely functioning artillery shells from North Korea. Also, no North Korean soldiers have fought alongside the Russians here. The Russians absolutely used up the North Koreans in Kursk and sent them directly against known Ukrainian positions so that the Russians could bypass them under fire. If anything, the North Koreans fought shoulder to shoulder with other North Koreans and drew the drone's attention, while the Russians bypassed the position hundreds of meters away. But according to him, Russia should apparently learn from a third world country. I would be very interested to know what the Russian population thinks about this, but honestly, I think they just don't care. That's 71. The motorized battalion is making progress at Udachne together with the 15th Motorized Rifle Brigade on the Russian side. They have thus brought the northern edge of the settlement completely under control and are now attacking towards the west. As far as I can judge, the place is completely under Russian control. Ukrainian units like the 23rd and 152nd Mechanized Brigade are largely operating in the north of the settlement. Russian soldiers were spotted at the Green Pin. They also belong to the 71st Battalion. Then, the Ukrainians called an airstrike that hit the old mine area. Both sides often use mines, tunnels, and shafts as shelters, and for storing ammunition, weapons, and equipment. This way, you can stay safe from airstrikes and drones if you reach them in time. The attack's success is unclear, as neither side has shown evidence of a hit. A Nigerian mercenary named Obiola, who is fighting on the Russian side in Ukraine, is drawing attention with contradictory statements. On social networks, he complains that users have already written "rest in peace" under his posts and wished him dead. He didn't see it himself. It was sent to him like that. He confidently explains that you can't kill him because he's in the Russian army, he hasn't died, and he will never die. At the same time, he emphasized that he is not willing to stand for someone else in another country, because if he is going to sacrifice his life, it will only be for Nigeria. These statements once again reveal the inner contradictions of many foreign mercenaries on the Russian side. They join a war, rhetorically distance themselves from its goal, and try to appear untouchable or above the situation. But the most interesting thing about the videos is that at the end he says that Facebook and TikTok have been sanctioned there, and that's why he can't upload videos there. Now consider why they obeyed the soldiers and chose to ban social media. One of the most severe Russian attacks so far was directed today at Ukraine's energy supply. The main targets were heating plants in the areas of Kiev, Kharkiv, and Dnipro. The apparent target was not military infrastructure, but rather the disruption of district heating, especially in the middle of winter. The pattern clearly indicates an attempt to put pressure on the civilian population and force them to leave. In total, more than 500 missiles were used. Instead of a generally high interception rate by Ukrainian air defense, there was once again significant damage to the energy infrastructure. The attack shows Russia still relies on systematic infrastructure terror, even when military gains are limited. Logically, the attack happened while Trump was saying he had reached a ceasefire agreement with Putin, which was supposed to prevent such attacks. Drone pilots of the 157th Brigade discover a hidden Russian infantry hideout. Several soldiers had hidden themselves in an underground maintenance pit. So, in a kind of pit that, from workshops where you can basically go down to reach the underside of a vehicle. These pits were used by the Russian soldiers as improvised hiding places to evade reconnaissance. Initially, nothing was visible from the air. Only targeted drone reconnaissance revealed 3 to 4 infantrymen gathering there. It's quite interesting how the pilot sometimes had to lie on the ground, had to touch down, so he could fly into the pit without getting caught on the vehicle. Artillery wouldn't have been able to do it that precisely, and if infantrymen had been sent in, there would have been the risk of being shot here. I think drones will be used, and I don't care what any company chief executive officer says about it. Drones will always be crucial in wars, including future conflicts. Even if you invent countermeasures against them that might be able to stop them on a large scale, then systems will just be invented to withstand those as well. The endless cycle of innovation will continue. It's too soon to say that universally. Claiming drones or anti-drone measures are pointless is short-sighted and foolish. A Russian soldier surrendered to a 37th drone operator, Marine Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. The soldier followed the instructions from the air and laid down his weapon before being guided out of the combat area by the drone. The incident once again shows that drones are not only used for reconnaissance and combat, but can now also actively contribute to the capture of enemy soldiers. Though that's not completely accurate, since the last unmanned ground vehicle, ground drone, we saw actually resulted in a capture because it cornered 3 Russian soldiers and they couldn't fight against the drone, so they surrendered. In this case, however, he surrendered immediately and was more or less escorted away by the drone. But of course, that's still better than being killed. Of course, it should also be mentioned that despite the new ambitions of the Ukrainians, meaning that they want to reach 50,000 Russian losses per month, a captured soldier is still better than a dead one, because you can exchange him for one of your own, possibly better trained, or even turn him to your side. And you can take them into legions like the Freedom of Russia or the Russian Volunteer Corps and use them for your own cause. And with that, I want to thank all subscribers, channel members, and the Algo crew. Special thanks to Colonel Leiter Trenica, Robert Ziller, Dietrich, Freddy, and Meyerhofer. Please subscribe, like, comment, and see you in the next camp report.